Hokie hangover. Really quick. Counts Family Pharmacy, Home Field Apparel. We appreciate you supporting the podcast. Guys, it would take the head coach getting fired for us to be on time.
Come on now. This was our second straight episode where I've been on time. I'm sorry, I was a minute late to the preview for Old Dominion. Glad we did that.
Yeah, that was a very productive exercise for all of us, honestly, and all of our listeners. The insight generated from that preview will be remembered for generations to come.
Well, you ended up previewing one of the most consequential games in Virginia Tech history.
Didn't even know it.
Didn't even know.
We kind of did, but not like that. I mean, hey, Brent, buddy, not like this. But
hey, hate to see it happen that way. But here we are.
Yeah, Virginia Tech loses to Old Dominion 45-26. We've decided as a group that we are not going to discuss the on-field minutia of this game tonight. That is
why not?
Yeah, I wanted to break down the backup offensive lineman's PFF grades.
We've decided that that would be an exercise in futility. That's not really why anyone is here. We all went to bed last night wondering if we would get this news on Sunday. I'll be honest, when none of the national reporters had leaked it by like 10 or 11 a.m., I kind of assumed that it was not going to happen today and that we were maybe waiting until Monday or that it wasn't going to happen at all. Boy, were we wrong. Not long after the 1 o'clock NFL games kicked off, Pete Thamel dropped the bomb that Virginia Tech was planning on firing Brent Pry. They did so shortly thereafter in an official announcement. I'm going to go ahead and read the official announcement really quick. And we're going to talk about this and cut this up pretty significantly because I think the announcement is worthy. This is shared from Virginia Tech Athletics. President Tim Sands shares the following message with our university community, alumni, and supporters. Coach Brent Pry has been relieved of his coaching duties effective immediately. We appreciate Coach Pry's efforts and service since 2021. Unfortunately, the results on the field were not acceptable and a change in leadership is necessary. Philip Montgomery will serve as the interim head coach. We will continue to fully support our team and student athletes for the remaining games as we strive together to significantly improve the trajectory of our football program this season. To our students, alumni, and the rest of Hokie Nation, we understand and share your disappointment with the season so far. As we move forward together, please join us in supporting and encouraging our student athletes and athletics staff as they take on this new challenge. And here's a really critical graph. Board of Visitors members Jay Pearson and Ryan McCarthy have been charged by the rector, John Rakovich, to work with university leadership and AD Whit Babcock to develop a financial, organizational, and leadership plan that will rapidly position the Virginia Tech football program to be competitive with the best in the ACC. That plan will be presented to the Board of Visitors later this month. The new framework for college sports will be fully established for next season, so this is the time to make a major move. So Brent Pry's gone. Philip Montgomery is in charge. Whit Babcock is still around. But this message did not come from Whit Babcock. This message came from President Tim Sands. And as it was quickly pointed out to me not long after this dropped, the announcement that Justin Fuente was leaving was dropped by Whit Babcock. Significance in that change there? I would say so.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, here's the reality, right? The person ultimately charged with taking responsibility for the situation as it stands and the situation that will be inherited by the next coach is the person who's going to go out and make that statement. And the reality is that, as we've been saying for years now on this podcast, as many people have been saying, it's not a unique revolutionary idea that we came up with. It's pretty much how this industry works. You rarely get to hire a second football coach. You never get to hire a third. And with Virginia Tech having hit Historic program rock bottom yesterday evening at Lane Stadium. It is clear that Brent Pry's boss will not be getting out unscathed either. Now, there's plenty of reason why they wouldn't make the jump right away and fire them both on the same day. Number one being the plan that's being presented to the board. That is kind of from Babcock's request at that point. They're trying to get a ton of information together by September 30th and draw up that plan. I think with the institutional knowledge that he has there, it would make sense to have Whit Babcock remain at least a person in the room. But they wouldn't have even mentioned a council as drawn up by the Board of Visitors in this search process if Whit Babcock had any say. The reality is he's still on the staff, part of the administration, but he's been neutered from a decision-making standpoint. And this is going to be a complete and total reset, not just for Virginia Tech football, but Virginia Tech athletics, how the department is structured, how the department operates, and how things are going to look going forward. That is the message that you could read between the lines in that statement from today, is that, yeah, we are going all the way back to square one here.
Yeah, for the people out there who are really upset that Whit Babcock is still employed, I mean, don't be. We've talked about this. Like, if you're serious about football, which Virginia Tech purports itself to be, and I think all the reasons Andrew just mentioned is a good reason to feel good about the future and, you know, where Virginia Tech sees not only the football program going, but the broader athletic department going. If you're serious about all that stuff, you're not going to have Whit Babcock make a third football coaching hire. Like, that doesn't happen at power conference schools who are serious about contending in a sport, whether at a conference level or a national level, right? That's not going to happen. If he was going to be the one making the decision, like Andrew just mentioned and like Ricky just mentioned, the message would have been coming from him, right? That Brent Pry was fired. The message came from him when Justin Fuente was fired. Athletic directors tend to make those types of announcements. Those are, you know, president generally has a say, right? They're generally in the know as far as the decision making when you're hiring or firing a coach, but they're not the ones going out from a PR standpoint and making the statement. It's the athletic director. The fact that Whit Babcock has not made that statement is significant, right? That was the first thing I took away from that. I was like, oh, this message is from Sands. That makes total sense to me. Babcock is, you know, he obviously just presented to the board before the start of the season and pushing for more institutional help, right, for the football program in particular. He is spearheading that initiative. It's coming from him. He's the one who's kind of running the show there. And there's some help, obviously, and some assistance coming from the Board of Visitors. And, you know, everybody's working in tandem, I would say, with this in particular. Now, I think once that is established and the funding for the broader athletic department is set, I think there will very likely be a change in athletic director. I think that this is kind of Whit's last kind of item of business to take care of. I don't think that is going to be a surprise to him. I'm sure he knows this. I'm sure he's staying on as the athletic department transitions, and then Virginia Tech will be seeking a new athletic director. I think that's the only way to go for obvious reasons that I mentioned, that you can't have him hire another football coach, right? Number one. But number two, I think just because of the timing of this, I think this is the only way that this can happen, right? That this is going to be a search that is not conducted by Whit Babcock. It's going to be a committee. Andy Bitter at Tech Sideline got some information on that already today and reported it, that there are going to be several people making a collective decision on the next head coach, and that tells you everything you need to know. Whit Babcock is not going to be involved in that in a decision-making capacity.
Well, I was going to say, they are saying he's going to, at least Andy's reporting, he's going to be supporting the process.
Right.
Now, what that level of support is to be determined.
Not in the decision-making.
Yes. At the end of the day, It comes down to whether he actually has decision-making power. Like, ultimately, Whit Babcock made the decision, from what we understand, to hire Brent Pry over Mike Elko. I'm sure there were tens of people that in a serious manner assisted on the search, gave their input, but ultimately it was Whit Babcock's decision. Whit Babcock will not have that power anymore.
Right. And now if this dragged out, see, this is the thing. You could have moved on in theory, right? You could have moved on from Whit Babcock back after basketball season when that ended up being a total unmitigated disaster on the back of your football program turning in a very disappointing season in the first year that Brent Pry had serious expectations, especially when you consider that Mike Young's roster for men's basketball was totally neutered by the fact that Triumph NIL, all the money, right, the funding was pushed towards retaining the football team. And I get it, right? But Virginia Tech was in a position where they really pushed all of their resources into football to try to get this thing back up and running for Pry, and they turned in a pedestrian season, very pedestrian. So, you could have made a decision to move on from Babcock after that debacle. You didn't. You kept him on, and now you're in a position where you have to hire both a head coach and, in very short order, an athletic director at the same time. And you're also going to be in a position where the athletic director that is installed, in all likelihood, depending on the timing of this, it's likely that the new head coach won't even be selected by the new athletic director, right? So there's that piece of it too, which, we don't know that for sure yet.
I'll say I do find that concerning.
And we don't know that for sure yet, of course, right? I mean, it's very early in the process, but Brent Pry was fired in September, and the timeline has obviously been expedited a bit. We felt like it was inevitable coming out of the Vanderbilt game. I felt like anything short of 7-5 would probably get him fired. But things were expedited after Vanderbilt. We were like, okay, I mean, this is 1,000% where it's heading. And then you go out and do what you did last night. I mean, I shut the game off with 6.5 minutes to go in the second quarter and never turned it back on. I was getting, the score alerts and stuff like that and text updates from all you guys watching the game and a couple other friends. But that was an unmitigated disaster last night. I mean, there was no way you could bring him back to coach next week. Yep. No way. So I was with you, Ricky, when I didn't see anything by like 10 or 11 o'clock. I was like, well, could the reporting from like Pete Nakos of On 3, where it's like, well, remember, players can opt out and redshirt. I was like, I don't care. Like, he cannot coach another game at Virginia Tech after what we just saw last night. Like, no. They weren't even competitive against a group of 5 or a group of whatever we're calling now, group of 6 team. Weren't even competitive in that game last night against an in-state team that he's already lost to in his tenure. And, we purport, flagship program of the state, and we're going to recruit the Tidewater and all this stuff. And then you lose like that to Old Dominion and just and the team has quit on him. Right. So, I mean, you had to fire him. So,
but Mike, they scored, what was it? Like 21 points in the second, or 19 points in the second half. They didn't quit.
I was relieved to get the tweet from Pete Thamel. I was like, okay, it's happening today. Sigh relief.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those things, right, where when the conclusion is foregone, what's the point of continuing and having this guy stick around, have the fan base get even more toxic at that point, and for good reason. I'm not blaming the fans by any means. I mean, that's like what we saw last night was a disgrace, but that's exactly it. You can talk your way out of, you can spin the South Carolina game into a positive the following week. It's pretty much over against Vanderbilt, but maybe you can talk your way out of it. I mean, if Virginia Tech had gone out and blown out Old Dominion 45-0, the conversation that we might be having here tonight could be, well, Vanderbilt beat South Carolina. Maybe it's not that bad. Let's just see how it goes against NC State and then through the month of October. But in a moment as big as it could be for the regime, the players came out like as flat as a freaking pancake. It's obvious that the buy-in is when the people in the room know, I know, you know, all of our listeners know, anyone who remotely gives two fill in the blanks about this football program knows, then what's the point of having the guy in the room? Signal to your fans, this is unacceptable. We're going to figure it out. Punt the season. Hope that Philip Montgomery can get more out of this team than Pry was able to get in the last 3 halves of football, and look towards the future. Because as much as we all wanted it to work out, Brent Pry seemed like a cool dude. Seems like a guy I could hang out with. Not the guy. Not the guy to take on, such an important period in the history of Virginia Tech football and the history of college football in and of itself, when at best you could say things flatlined over the course of his tenure, right? It was over, and everyone knew it. So today they finally had the grace to turn words into action.
Yeah, and Izzy does our photos on the sideline, and she's great. And I wanted to share this this photo in particular because I think it's kind of indicative of what we saw on Saturday. There was a point in the game where Virginia Tech was like shooting off fireworks after these touchdowns in the second half. And Izzy got this photo, and like, Jesus Christ, man. I mean,
Hey, look, there's all of our listeners from the Old Dominion preview. There they are, all 100 of them.
If this photo isn't indicative of where Virginia Tech is as a program right now, I don't know what is. You're getting pantsed on your home turf by like your infant brother. Like if UVA is going to be little bro, like ODU's got to be like 10 years younger than you. And he's beating the shit out of you. Like he's putting you night, and you're out here, you shooting off fireworks in the second half while you've got just, I don't know, what is that? 20,000, 30,000 open seats just in the one stand.
Yeah, it's bad.
This visual is as jarring as it gets for me. And it's, I think it helps us kind of realize exactly where Virginia Tech is as a program right now. Like, this is not the Virginia Tech that people thought it was even 2 years ago, 3 years ago. I mean, we sat in the stands in Annapolis and we thought, shit, man, I think he's figuring it out. And it's not right. It's not right where it needs to be yet, but the signs are there, right? Andrew talks about proof of concept all the time. We felt like we were seeing that. And to think about what we were feeling in that moment, what we were thinking in that moment, and then be here tonight recording this with you guys, it's just incredibly jarring, and it is hard to reconcile those two thoughts.
Yeah, no, I've been kind of going back into the memory bank today for a lot of, days of my life prior, right? I thought a lot about the day that Fuente was fired, almost 4 years ago at this point. Obviously, life very different for me. I was still working at ESPN Blacksburg back then. But that was kind of more of a like ding dong, the witch is dead moment than anything else. This seems like more of a collective sigh of relief by everyone saying, okay, that's over with. But to go back to where we were, that day in Annapolis, and truly like one of my favorite memories, Virginia Tech football fan, because optimism truly was, at this all-time high. That, and not just the bowl itself, but that string of announcements of all the guys saying they were coming back. And, the off-season long 9-month media tour that followed. And, on this podcast, we've always tried to shoot it straight with you guys. And we have never said that we are immune to bias. We're all alumni, major fans, care a great deal about this program for a litany of reasons that we've listed over the years. But we can all say we were genuinely buying the hype. That was genuinely where we were at going into last season, that it felt like this thing could really be launching on this tremendous trajectory. But it was like, in retrospect, right? Every little nitpick that you could have about Pry from early on in year one through the struggles in the beginning of year two, came to bear in a big way, all throughout as things were kind of falling apart in years 3 and then here in this first quarter of year 4. Like he never got any better at the head coaching related issues that plagued him the entire time. It was, a extreme seeming lack of professional development, and that was reflected in his football program every time they took the field.
Yeah.
So, the optimism at the time was warranted, right? Because here's where we are, right? You think you're headed in the right direction, and that is with this guy still kind of learning how to do his job. So when he figures it out, oh, then we're really going to be cooking. And it just never happened. It just never happened. So, I was talking to Doug Bowman on the other podcast today, and I said, where did it go wrong? And it kind of was just right from the jump in a weird way.
Seemed like he set himself up for failure. And I remember we caught a little bit of heat for that. I know I did when he made the Bowen and Marv hires. I thought they were awful decisions right off the bat. I loved the Rudolph hire. Obviously, that one didn't work out, but it seemed like everything that he was doing, as far as putting the people in the places they needed to be in to succeed, was just not working. And I think that that's kind of my biggest message that I've been trying to put out there for a while now, and I still think is important. Virginia Tech has a people problem. Virginia Tech does not have a resources problem. If we're trying to frame this in the most realistic way possible, Virginia Tech has plenty of resources to be a competitive team within the ACC. They can go 8-4. They might be able to pop off a 9-win season once every 5 years. They can consistently make bowl games. They can not get embarrassed on their home field by an in-state rival that's at the G6 level. Those resources are there, and they've been there for a long, long time. This is a people issue. The people in charge, whether it be in Merriman, whether it be in the football facility, they're the problem. They're not getting the job done. And this can all be fixed if you get the right people in charge. I thought there was a good comment in here that I want to highlight from Will Secor, who, Mike, I know you're familiar with from the Basketball Conference podcast. Will says, if it makes y'all feel any better, Jeff Collins was fired not even 3 years ago, and look how far Georgia Tech has come. And the ACC change can happen fast. And that's certainly the case. And you have to hope that if Virginia Tech can start putting the right individuals in the positions that matter, that they can maybe get the full value of the input that's being put into this program. Because Virginia Tech is spending a lot of money, okay? They're not spending enough to be a national title contender, right? That's not a realistic expectation. Brent Pry mentioned that in his press conference after the game. That's just absurd. Anyone expecting Virginia Tech to compete for a national championship right now is off their rocker. But anyone expecting Virginia Tech to be a respectable, competent program, those expectations are valid. They are in no way asking for too much. And it all comes down to putting the right people in charge. And for the second time in a row, Witt obviously did not do that. Brent Pry got multiple cracks at putting the right people in charge around him at the coordinator levels, at the assistant levels. It doesn't seem like many of those hires are working. So this is the end result. This is a results-driven business, and we've made it abundantly clear on the show that not one of us has any personal animus towards Brent Pry. I feel for his family. I know that this sucks for them. I'm sure his kids just started school, and I don't know how the hell they're going to handle that. Yes, it helps that he's got some big money coming his way over the foreseeable future, but as we all know, money does not buy happiness. And I feel for the family, and I feel for him because I know he hates it. I know he's upset about it. But in the end, you got to get the job done. And if you don't, you have to go. And Mike, you put out a tweet last night that I thought was super on the nose, that you're fully expecting Brent Pry to be a very competent and successful defensive coordinator in his next job. And you know what? I hope that happens. I really do. I don't want him to go anywhere else and stink. I hope he figures it out. But I'm very glad that he's no longer coaching my alma mater's football team.
Yep. Yeah. The stuff about having the money to fall back on, I mean, that is great. I feel bad for his kids because just having my own son now, having them starting school and then having to deal with you have to deal with at school with the team playing that poorly. I mean, that's kind of just comes with the territory when you have a parent in a significant job role in a state, like it's at the university, but like very high profile job, like it's part of the territory. So I do feel bad for his kids and his family. Obviously he will be paid well and he'll be fine, and it's part of the territory. Sorry.
Don't even look at it. Just keep for those who are wondering what we're talking about, just for the memes, I'll throw it up there.
Yeah.
Listen to the audio. If you're listening to the audio version, don't worry about it. If you're that worried about it, go watch the video version on YouTube.
Yeah. So we were sitting in rain-soaked Annapolis, and we were like, all right, Virginia Tech is beating the brakes off of a Tulane team without their head coach and without their starting quarterback and a million opt-outs. And Virginia Tech, we knew, and we mentioned this at the time, Virginia Tech in year two, right? The start of the year was so poor, and people were calling for heads then. And we're all like, all right, guys, they're not going to fire Pry like 3 or 4 games in a year or two. It's probably not going to happen unless it gets really bad because of the buyout, is what we said. And then the team turned the season around. They started beating bad to mediocre teams and losing to the good ones. So it's like, all right, walk before you run. Then last year you have expectations, and it starts with a dud, right? Against Vanderbilt on the road in Nashville, a game that you were favored in, and you go on the road and you lay an egg. And it just kind of spun out from there. It was a very up and down, mediocre year last year, after you paid all that money to keep all those players and had a schedule that was extremely favorable. You lay a 500 season out there and you go play in a bowl game with, again, a million opt-outs. You were running third stringers out there. It was embarrassing considering what the expectations were heading into the year and the schedule that was in front of Virginia Tech. So then you come into this season and you're like, all right, it's kind of got to be good. And it looked like Pry, by his own doing, was a little bit up against it. You have to make 2 new coordinator hires, one of which was your call, right? And then you hire a new offensive line coach, and you have a linebackers coach, in Xavier Adibi, who's a school legend, right, coaching that group. And you're like, all right, things are going to be different because they have to be. Not to mention the extreme roster turnover. Your entire defense, essentially, especially in the back end, is made up of transfers. offensive side of the ball, running back, the entire running back room's new, so on and so forth. But you knew this was going to be a make or break year with so many new pieces on the roster. And to go out and put out what I considered to be a respectable effort against South Carolina defensively, especially offense. We don't need to rehash all that, but to put a respectable effort out there against South Carolina, and then to have last week go like it did in the second half, and then Saturday night to have that go as poorly as it did, you had to fire him. You had to make the move. So this is the right decision. Virginia Tech now gets a head start on a head coaching search, which, guys, we're going to collectively find out pretty quickly what kind of job Virginia Tech is. I do think it benefits Tech to be out in the market early. Virginia Tech was not the only school that fired its head coach today. UCLA fired theirs in the middle of year 2. Deshaun Foster is out. Of course,
if you put money on Pry getting fired first, you lost. Technically,
you lost. It was actually Deshaun Foster. You could have flipped a coin after Friday and or Saturday, depending on what game you were watching. So that writing was on the wall there as well for Foster, who I was shocked got the head coaching job there to begin with, even though he is a school legend, right, as a player. That was shocking. That is exactly why Virginia Tech shouldn't hire Michael Vick. So we can get into the candidates here in a few minutes, but like I see that thrown out there. There is no, first of all, I would be shocked if Virginia Tech did that for a guy who is literally like 2 games into his head coaching career, 3. Yeah. Wouldn't
He's got
do that.
1 win.
Yeah. I would not go down that path of, nostalgia hire because he was a great player. It makes that hire for Virginia Tech at this moment in time makes absolutely no sense. No sense. I mean, should we go into candidates now? Because I have, unless you guys want to bang the drum on something else here, I do have a few based on a level of knowledge.
Well, so how about this? Let's talk about, I guess, maybe like the biggest. What's the most important quality that you want the next coach to have?
I want them to know what the hell they're doing.
No bar.
But in all seriousness, like, this is a moment of extreme desperation for Virginia Tech, who has now gotten it wrong the last 2 times over. Like, you want a guy who could come in and say, here's how we're doing it. Here's how I've done it before. We know this works. We're going to run this like a legitimate football program. I now have the financials to back it up, and I know how to execute. Let's go for it. There will be no learning on the job.
Mm-hmm.
Now, to the extent that, like, obviously you want someone who's truly done it before. To the extent that those coaches are available is slim. I personally, and I'll just throw this name out here to get started, I would love them to get on the phone with Pat Fitzgerald. That's a guy who ran a Big Ten program for almost 20 years, where he was constantly overmatched in terms of resources compared to his opponents each and every week.
Yep.
And it wasn't always sunshine and roses, but he had a lot of really good seasons, and that's someone that Virginia Tech would obviously, like, I think he kind of fits the mold too. He combines, the personification of Virginia Tech football's philosophy with actually having done it before. Now, whether he wants to come here or not, I don't know. Like, you can say the same thing about Dan Mullen. He's done it before. Mississippi State, similar. Yep, there you go. Jimmy Cleveland launched Dan Mullen. But did it for a long time at Mississippi State, had a run of success there, goes to Florida, isn't like all bad, kind of just gets run out of town by a crazy fan base, exhibits leadership, knows what he's doing. That being said, if UNLV has a halfway decent season, we're not going to be the only ones calling that name. Those would be like my ideal, fit that mold. Done it before, available, no budget cuts here. If you're committing to invest $200 million into the athletic department budget, we can't be shortchanging, looking for the discount rack when it comes for who's going to run our football program.
Yeah.
Like, it matters too much. It always comes down to coaching. Like, to the point that was made there earlier by our friend Will with the Georgia Tech fan. It doesn't need to be this way. You know, Whip Babcock chose Brent Pry over Mike Elko. And Mike Elko had Duke winning 8 games a year right off the bat, starting from a lower point. It comes down to coaching. You got to make the right call, and you can't shortchange it.
I have a list. Now, this is a list of people who, based on a level of knowledge that I have, I strongly believe we'll be getting a call. Now, I don't know if that means they'll be interested. In fact, a few of these names on this list I know won't be interested. I tweeted some of them out earlier. I wanted to save some of it for the podcast. Tweet some of these out earlier. Virginia Tech will call John Summerall, the head coach at Tulane. I don't expect him to be interested. Okay. I know it's a hot name on the list.
Explain to the listeners why, because I think that's important for people to realize.
Yeah. So the reason why is because, first of all, he's the hottest name on the coaching carousel. He's a guy who very easily could have taken a job last offseason and left Tulane. He has risen up the ranks very quickly, and he runs a very good program at Tulane that just beat Duke on Saturday in the Daria Mensa Bowl. So he's holding out for an SEC job. Okay. He obviously, Kentucky's his alma mater. So Kentucky could be making a head coaching move with Mark Stoops. He's on the hot seat. I could see that, but I think Summerall might be in play for a bigger job. Like if Billy Napier's let go at Florida, Summerall's going to be on the short list. Lane Kiffin, by the way, is also going to be on the short list at Florida if Billy Napier is let go. And I think Summerall could land at either Ole Miss or Florida. And then if you want to go sentimental higher, he can just go and work at Kentucky if he wants to. But for those reasons, I don't believe Summerall will be interested in taking the Virginia Tech job. Virginia Tech will call Shane. I expect him to not be interested at all. He has mentioned this in interviews. In Blacksburg, he will always be Frank's son. And he's in a better job now. He's in a tougher job, but he's in a better job now. He's done a pretty good job at South Carolina in a place that's very, very difficult to win in the SEC. And he's got them playing relevant football. I know they lost. Sellers got hurt, and they weren't playing well anyway. I know they lost on Saturday night to Vanderbilt. But Shane is not anywhere near a hot seat at South Carolina. If he was, I think you might entertain this a little bit more. But they love him there. Not happening. Jeff Monken at Army, I think will be on the list, and we'll get a phone call. He is obviously a good football coach. His name has come up in recent coaching carousels as a guy who might be trying to expand his horizons outside of service academy football. If he comes to Virginia Tech, I would not expect him really anywhere outside of Army to run the option. That's kind of out of necessity at service academy because you cannot recruit offensive linemen. You kind of just have to run the option.
But isn't that kind of what he's run, like even when he was at Georgia Southern?
Well, yeah, same reason at Georgia Southern. Yeah, very similar reason from a recruiting standpoint. I think that would be so for Monken. I think he's a good coach. I think it would be a good culture fit as well. And I think he knows what the hell he's doing. The problem with that hire is that it would have to be a very good staff around him. Not that he needs it from a head coaching X's and O's standpoint like Brent Pry would have. It's more of like if you're going to be running a totally new offense, you're just going to have a big time OC hire, for example. I think he'll be on the list. Bob Chesney at JMU, I expect him to get a call. That is a G5 or G6 coach that obviously coaching at JMU, coached at Holy Cross. He's in his late 40s. So from an age standpoint, you're kind of getting a younger head coach, but a guy who's coached a lot of football too at multiple levels and has had success kind of everywhere he's been. He's a G6 hire that I could see Virginia Tech having a bit more success kind of luring to Blacksburg if that was a guy who was near the top of their list. I think it's more likely, like, if you put Sumrall and Chesney on the board, I would obviously much rather have Sumrall, but I think it's much more likely Virginia Tech would land a guy like Bob Chesney instead. Like I mentioned earlier, Michael Vick is not a serious candidate. One name that I think should be on the board and that I know would be interested is Ryan Silverfield at Memphis. And I know people are like, oh my God, another Memphis head coach. Silverfield's been very good at Memphis. He's been there a while. I think he's ready to make a jump up. I think a move to Virginia Tech could make a lot of sense. He's very different from Fuente. Like, it's not the same type of hire. Like, it's not like offense. They run a good offense at Memphis, but it's not like Fuente where it was like that was the calling card. It would be a very different hire coming from Memphis to Virginia Tech. I think he'd be on the list as well. That's just some guys who I think Virginia Tech will certainly make a call to. Guys that I think are established head coaches that would make sense to reach out to. Dan Mullen is certainly one. And I think if you were ever going to afford Dan Mullen, I don't think Dan Mullen's going to come to Blacksburg on like a discount, but I think if you want to spend a little bit on this head coaching hire, but you're not sure like how much you're going to spend like relative to fans' expectations. Like, I don't think they're going out and paying like $8 million for a head coach or something like that. But I think you can get Dan Mullen. It's a retread, I guess, in terms of, you know, what happened at Florida, and now he's at UNLV. But his record at Florida wasn't even that bad. And I know it was a little ugly at the end, but he lands at UNLV. They've been pretty competitive so far this year.
For him right now,
they would kill to have the glory days back at Dan Mullen. They would really like to have him back. And he coached at Mississippi State, which I think is a good SEC comp to Virginia Tech, by the way. And
for those wondering, Mullen's deal is $3.5 million a year on average at UNLV.
Yep.
Which, even if Virginia Tech kept the same salary as they had for Brent Pry, would be far more than what Mullen is making.
Probably got to buy him out of that UNLV deal, but yeah. And to be clear here, as we go through these candidates, like, just to nip this in the butt before it even starts. Yes, with any of these guys that we're talking about, you run into the possibility that this is a stepping stone job for them. Yes, if Bob Chesney comes here and turns around Virginia Tech football, he'll probably be the head coach of a Big Ten or SEC school. Doesn't matter. Give me a paid mercenary. We need to fix this thing pronto.
Yeah.
Like, we got to be aware of who we are at this point. The next Frank Beamer isn't going to float in from the skies and, you know, be a legendary Hall of Fame football coach here for the next 20 years. But let's get someone who can turn this program on the path in the right direction and go from there. And that's why I am fully endorsing Jeff Fisher as the next coach of Virginia Tech.
Sounds like the kind of coach you're actually wanting, Andrew, is Buzz Williams.
No, yes, that's exactly what I am talking about. Yeah. Give me the Buzz Williams equivalent of football, hopefully a little bit more personable, less weird, but the results
Caleb, I will take.
Yeah.
The results I will take.
Would you be interested in the culinary? No, I'm just kidding. The coaching genius of one Rick Stockstill in Blacksburg.
I'm just saying he would be a good voice to have in the room. A good voice to have in the room.
I'll have him on the search committee, or in the Jerry Kill role.
I'll take.
Is not a candidate, by the way.
I'll take. Yeah, probably not. Is it time for John Boleyn to pack up his office in Merriman? I think so, right?
Yeah, he's
just wait on it. That's all I'll say.
Thomas makes a great point there. Mike McCarthy, you have to make the call. All he's done is win.
Mike, name you did not mention that I have to bring up. John Gruden.
I mean, if you're going like the Dan, so if we're talking like guys who have coached before, like big time names, like Gruden, Mullen, I've seen Jimbo Fisher floated, which I would not be interested in, but I've seen Jimbo Fisher. I mean, I guess I should be more open-minded to it, but I've seen the archaic offenses that he has run the last like 5 or 6 years when he's been coaching, and I'm good on that. But especially since he refuses to have anybody else call the plays but himself, that just no thank you. But he would be cheap because A&M's paying that buyout, which is like he would not cost a lot to come to Virginia. He would still want to be paid, but it wouldn't be like what Jimbo Fisher would be making in the SEC, for example.
Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, I asked the question, what was the most important thing that the next coach needs to have? And quite honestly, I think it needs to be more of a Justin Fuente style hire where you're bringing someone in that can get this program to run like a proper Power 4 program. And, based on the conversations I've had with folks, Justin didn't make a lot of friends inside the athletic department when he was calling out their lack of support, poor structure, and overall just kind of a small time approach to collegiate athletics at Virginia Tech. Justin made it very clear to those in power over in Merriman that if you guys want to compete at the highest level of college football, you're going to have to come with a little bit more. You're going to have to bring a little bit more to the table. And his flirtation with Baylor was the obvious kind of crux of that, was kind of the climax of that effort from Fuente to be like, you guys are not understanding what I'm saying. And I think that part of that's because Fuente was obviously able to learn what a real college program needs to look like at TCU. He did some of it on his own at Memphis, albeit with limited resources. And yes, Justin lacked some of the PR stuff, and that's something that maybe you can try and find someone that can do a little bit of both. But if we're looking at someone who can lead the program, I think it needs to be someone that has done this before. This is not a job where, and not a time for Virginia Tech where you can afford to have someone who's learning again. I mean, we've talked about this now multiple times. 2030 is going to be here before you know it. And the decisions that will be made in 2030 will actually be made before then, which means Virginia Tech has, 3 years maybe to figure this stuff out from an on-field product perspective, from a fundraising perspective, from an infrastructure and leadership perspective. These questions have to get answered in short order. And hiring someone who's never done this before, once again, is going to be a really tall task in what is, and I don't think this is exaggerating, the most critical time in the department's history, in the program's history. There will never be a less consequential time period than what is right now. The only thing that comes close is that rise to power that Frank had, where he didn't parlay that into something bigger. Virginia Tech has a chance to right some of those wrongs right now, but it's going to require the best individuals possible. It's going to require the most resources possible. And it's time to bring someone in that has the experience and knowledge and foresight to be able to execute that vision. And you're not going to get that with someone who is just coming off being a coordinator.
Which is why every candidate I just mentioned, and you can throw Alex Galesh from South Florida in there if you want to. I think he's still probably a year early, but like that's another guy. Every candidate I mentioned there, it's very early, number one, but like every candidate I mentioned there is a head coach somewhere else. I don't think those are people I think will get a call. Some of them I know will get a call, and then most of them I think will get a call. Virginia Tech should do everything in their power to hire somebody, in my opinion, should do everything in their power to hire somebody with head coaching experience. If you are going coordinator again, it has to be coming from the Saban tree, the Kirby Smart tree, I guess if you're thinking about like Will Stein, the offensive coordinator at Oregon, like coming from Dan Lanning,
So
sure.
yeah, so why did that name get floated today?
I don't know yet. I'll try to figure it out. I don't know yet.
This is always my issue with these like initial coaching lists for open positions. Is that people are just throwing shit against the wall and hoping it sticks with half of the names that they use.
Well, yeah, and
nobody had Brent Pry on a short list when they hired him.
No, he was on the long list. A good thing to do with coaching searches, especially like when you see names just thrown out there, which is something I've learned like the last few years working at SI, is I figured this out. A good thing to do with the coaching searches is like there's going to be lists thrown out there, and what these writers do and these reporters do is the top names on the list are the ones that you expect, right? It's always going to be hot G5 head coach coming up, right? So Summerall, Golish, like those are the two. Bob Chesney with Virginia Tech because or with JMU because he's in state and he was
a Hamden Sydney guy,
right. So there's a lot of ties there, right? So like his name's on the list, but you can sift through the bullshit pretty quickly too. Like guys who are like trying to get back in the game. Like I don't buy the Jimbo Fisher thing at all. Like I've seen Jimbo Fisher float. I don't think so. I would be really surprised by that, and maybe I'm totally off base. And I'll let you know, but that would really surprise me. The names with like G5 coordinators or like P5 coordinators, P6, P4. I mean P4 coordinators and like G6 coordinators. I don't see it after what we just witnessed. Like let's think this through now. Virginia Tech hired a coordinator who was very good with no head coaching experience, and look at what happened, right? And that doesn't mean the next guy you hire that's a coordinator is going to do the exact same thing, because if that were the case, Oregon would have fired Dan Lanning already. Georgia would have fired Kirby Smart already. You know what I mean? Like you can go down the list of coaches that have been successful figuring it out, but they've also come from certain coaching trees. So figure that out too. If you're going to go that route, make the right coordinator hire. But I would be pretty surprised just because of the moment and how important it is, Ricky, like you mentioned. I would be very surprised if Virginia Tech went with somebody that did not have the head coaching experience. I think they go that route, number one, because you have somebody who's done it before. And because, when you're comparing Fuente and Pry, for example, the reason why Fuente didn't work out is because he hired too many of his friends, right? Which is something that Pry did too. But Fuente's friends had a little bit more experience, right? And then he wouldn't get rid of them. And by the time he did, it was too late. And Fuente didn't make friends with anybody in the athletic department, rubbed a lot of people the wrong way. So like that's why the Fuente tenure tanked. That was like the short list of reasons why
that and the whole recruiting classes in the 70s. But.
Right, which has a lot to do with the wouldn't get rid of his friends thing. But the guy, at least you knew if Virginia Tech was on the field, you knew it was going to be at least a semi-competent product. Here towards the end of the Pry tenure, I know the Duke thing happened at the end of Fuente, but this ODU thing really would never have happened under Fuente. I mean, that I know it did, right? And Josh Jackson breaks his leg, and like that was a shock, and the defense fell apart. But like, they wouldn't be getting run out of their home stadium by a G6 team when they're far more talented than. It just wouldn't.
Yeah,
that would have shocked me, right? There was a higher floor with Fuente, and I think when you let him go for all of the reasons that were necessary at the time, I just think Virginia Tech should go the route of trying to make something like that work again with a head coach with prior experience, and then hoping that it's a better fit from a culture and relationship standpoint in-house. I think that would probably serve them well, especially at this point in time coming off of the Pry tenure and just kind of where we're at, which really can't be much further in rock bottom.
Yeah, I mean, you look at similar situations to this in the past, right? And it's hard to find comps because Virginia Tech's situation is so unique and precarious. But I mean, I think of Miami, pre-Cristobal, where they said, all right, let's throw the money, let's make a splash, let's get someone in here, and Mario Cristobal that's proven that he can do it before. I think of Nebraska at the end of that Scott Frost tenure, which ended, I believe, in the exact same period of time as Brent Pry. Year 3 or year 4, game 3, or maybe it was year 5, game 3 for Frost. I don't know, either way. But they go out and get Matt Rule. Like, when you're in that position where this next head coaching hire really needs to be the one, you want to bring in a guy who is the big splash. You pull no punches. You open up the pocketbook, and you do what's best for. I mean, you mentioned Stoops potentially losing his job in Kentucky. Come on down, because please.
Good point. That's a good point.
Please come here. I just in the same way that I would with Dan Mullen, just in the same way as I would with a number of these candidates that have come through. Like, you feel like you probably would have some level of confidence in their competence week over week. Guys who have a bank of experience that they can lean on in these situations that Brent Pry just couldn't seem to figure out. But with this investment that you have in the athletic department, you want to get that released, and you want to make it loud and clear to a coaching market that didn't look at Virginia Tech as a great stop the last time around, and say, it's different now. Here's how we're investing. Here's how, written down on paper, we're going to set you up for success to not just compete with the low to mid-tier ACC teams that have been a thorn in our side, but legitimately compete at the top of the conference and beyond. So, as important as these conversations that we're having about potential fit are, more importantly so, is it important for Virginia Tech as a institution, as an athletic department, to lay out a clear message of why they're actually a good suitor for these guys to come in and succeed and potentially advance their career. The messaging on that, beyond just the details, which are going to be important, but the messaging on that, both publicly and through internal channels that folks like us don't really ever get a real insight into, is going to be so pivotal, because as we've mentioned a couple of times, it's not a one-way street. It's not just about Virginia Tech wanting you. This is not the job that it was when Virginia Tech hired Justin Fuente as that hottest coach on the candidate market in 2016. It's a totally different situation, and Virginia Tech needs to position themselves as best they can in what could be a pretty big shakeup. They're, for all the things that Mike has been talking about the entire time. Well, they're going to fire Napier at Florida, and if they do, does Kiffin go there? Because then Ole Miss is open. There could be, shuffling that here on September 14th. We have no idea what's to come. We have no clue what's to come. So all Virginia Tech can do right now is an extreme amount of due diligence on all the possibilities and position themselves as a spot that some of these top tier coaches actually want to go. We may not get one, we may not get two, but we should be beating UCLA in this competition. They're $200 million in debt. Find a way to position yourself as a better job.
And you know what? The name might not even be, I just listed guys who I either know they'll call or think it's probably getting a call, but the name might not even be on that list. There's a million coaches that are reputable, they're doing well for themselves at other schools that might be interested in Virginia Tech for one reason or another. Marquette, I guess, saw it coming because Buzz Williams was not getting along with the athletic director, but Buzz Williams hire shocked me.
He was pitching himself to just about anyone that would listen,
which is what he does. He does the same thing.
With the Marquette Buzz Williams thing, I could tell you from good sources. There was a lot going on behind the scenes with Buzz Williams and Marquette that he wasn't necessarily super welcome there anymore.
Yeah.
So
Same thing that he was doing at A&M. That's why he like basically called up Maryland, was like, I'll take the job. You know what I mean? It's just coaches do that too in football. So, I mean, there could be some of that going on as well for names that aren't obvious that could be on the list. Remember, we thought Matt Campbell was like a finalist for this job 4 years ago, and look at what Iowa State's doing this year so far. Is he a guy who finally wants to leave Iowa? You know what I mean? Like, does he finally want to leave Ames? Is he going to be a name that pops up at some point? I don't know. It's just an example.
Yeah. I mean, it's a situation where you essentially need someone that can just get you through this next transitional phase of college athletics. And if that means that they win, 45 games over the next 4 seasons or the next 5 seasons, 6 seasons, and they get you through 2030 and then they leave, fine. Like who
cares?
At this point, it would be much better for Virginia Tech to sell themselves as a potential stepping stone than worry about being one. Because right now, you're not a stepping stone. You are quickly becoming a dead end. And that will kill any legitimate interest from coaching candidates worth a damn.
I mean, Bud Elliott from Cover 3 mentioned this. He tweeted about it and mentioned it on a couple podcasts recently, but there were coordinators that Brent Pry was interested in bringing in this offseason, both on offense and defense, that were higher on the list than the guys they brought in. And they basically just said, no, thanks. We're not going to, they kind of saw writing on the wall where it was like, we're not going to move our family to Blacksburg for a year to then do this like lame duck head. Like, there's no reason for us to do that. And he didn't mention names, but he was like, oh, it's like sitting coordinators elsewhere that Pry was reaching out to. They're like, we're not doing that.
Yeah. The nice point is, I think this is a good comment here from Hokie Andrew. We are a spec build now. You tell us what you want, and we will build it with X budget. Good opportunity to make the job what you want if you have the vision. That requires the Board of Visitors to come through. Now, if they do, he's absolutely right.
Mm-hmm.
Because then you're looking at someone like John Rakovich or Jay Pearson or Ryan McCarthy going to a coaching candidate and saying, look, we are serious. We are about to invest X amount of money into this football program over the next 10 years. Everything that you could want for your football program, you can have it right now. And if you're serious about attracting someone with some chops, someone that's going to garner interest from other schools, that's the kind of investment that it's going to require. If you're going to go the more with less route, which has been kind of Virginia Tech's approach for the last really ever of this program, then you're going to have to settle for a low-end Power 4 coordinator or a high-end Group of 6 coordinator. And you're going to have to hope that you just happen to hire the next hot guy. And that's not a reliable path to get Virginia Tech where they want to be. So it's going to require the Board of Visitors to be extremely serious about what they're looking for and about getting this funding. The Board of Visitors is going to have to vote for it. They're going to have to sell it to donors. They're going to have to sell it to other folks within like state government to make sure that everyone's good with this. If they can, then I'm optimistic about what Virginia Tech can be. I really am. If they can't, then, well,
I agree.
Then you're hiring Michael Vick in the next cycle.
God damn it.
Gotta get this one right, man.
I cannot make it clear enough. Any person within Virginia Tech's leadership structure that wants to hire an FCS coach with 3 games under his belt is completely unserious and not fit for the job. and it doesn't matter what that guy's name is.
Yeah, well, I'll throw this out here because so much to come. It's going to be a long drag of a season. We got 9 games left of this stuff, but and
still games to play.
Yeah, and we could talk, going forward about expectations for this year's team going forward. But if you're listening and you're enjoying what you're hearing, and you want to ride with us through the uncertainty that will be the rest of this football season and this coaching search, and it's going to be go, 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 go from now until, likely the beginning of next season. Hit subscribe here on YouTube if you're watching on YouTube. If you're watching on X, give us a follow. Your regular podcast platforms is your first time there. Throw us a follow there as well. We love having people here. We love this engagement. The chat going crazy these last couple episodes because everyone, and we're all in this together. And you know what, Hookie Andrew, I feel better today than I felt in a while because I know that the opportunity to start anew is as a stereotypical football coach would say in any situation, everything's in front of us right now. And it's the opportunity to make a change and do it right. But it starts today.
I've seen this name in the comment section a couple times. Jim Morit from UConn.
UConn lost to first-year FBS program Delaware on Saturday in overtime.
Shout out Blue Hens, baby.
Roll Hens.
I have no connection to that program except for the fact that I used them in College Football 26. But go Delaware, man.
I have to acknowledge Billy here. Billy just said Andrew wearing a Tar Heels hoodie. No. Carolina Panthers today. I would never wear. Man,
that would have been sacrilege.
Yeah, I would never wear UNC. My dad went to Duke. I went to Virginia Tech. The one thing that holds true across the board is my disdain for the folks at Chapel Hill there. So, come on.
Who is the bigger Duke fan in Virginia Tech's podcast space, Billy Ray or Andrew?
I think I take the cake on that. I hope Billy would agree.
Yep.
All right. Hour and 7 minutes. It's crazy to think that the last time we recorded an episode of a coach getting fired, I was doing it on my lunch break outside of my office in my car. And we were talking about Justin Fuente being canned. Now we are talking about Brent Pry being canned. The more things change, the more they stay the same, sadly. We're going to talk about this game a little bit more in depth, probably on the Wofford preview. And we'll get into some of the X's and O's because, as Andrew mentioned, there's a lot of games left. ACC play hasn't even started yet for Virginia Tech. This season has a lot of weeks to go. Philip Montgomery is going to be running the show here. That was a bit of a surprise as the interim head coach, although I certainly get why they're choosing him. We'll discuss that and kind of the impact of that, what that means for this program for the rest of the season, and try and give an outlook on what lays ahead of Virginia Tech because, boys, still in ACC title contention, believe it or not.
And again, we'll see. But between now and then, folks, I would say don't be surprised. We see some attrition from the current roster. Yeah. Everyone has their red shirt preserved. To the degree that matters anymore, I don't know. But guys on this team could hang it up, say, we'll save that year of eligibility for the future and mosey on along. So who you think is the starting lineup very well may not be next week.
I will say, if Philip Montgomery led the opt-out Hokies to the ACC championship game, I can unequivocally say he will be your next head football coach. If he led a bunch of third stringers to the conference title game, don't need to worry about that. I don't think.
Yeah, I was going to say, would not bet on that one.
I think he'd be coaching at Florida next year.
Yes.
Interesting discussion really quick before we wrap this up. Andrew brings up a good point. Players can transfer out starting tomorrow. They can enter the portal, preserve their redshirt season because they haven't played 4 games yet. I think there's an interesting discussion to be had here because players could certainly do that. However, there are going to be openings that probably come up when players do that. Would you rather take a shot at putting almost a year's worth of film on tape and then enter the portal in December rather than doing it now and not getting any game tape from this year, but keeping your year of eligibility? Because I think there's an argument that can be made that you should go ahead and play it out.
Depends on how old you are.
Yeah.
I think. Like if you're a junior, you're probably looking at it differently than a freshman. You know what I mean?
Yeah, for sure. And if you're already exhausted your eligibility, well,
keep playing.
You better learn Montgomery. Is all I'm gonna say. We'll be back later this week to talk about what lays ahead for the Hokies for the remainder of the season, and we'll give you some cutting edge analysis of the Wofford Terriers. I'm sure Mike and Andrew will come with some critical knowledge regarding their offensive and defensive schemes.
May miss it depending on when we're recording because I will be at a wedding.
Well, so go ahead, Andrew.
Yeah, I was saying, Ricky, we'll talk about it off air, but our the idea that was floated of a bit of a round table with some folks that I've been in discussions with about wanting to make an appearance here could be a fitting time to just get a varying degree of opinions from different folks. Who knows? I think everyone, despite the fact it might say Wofford preview, folks, but you know what product you get when you listen to the Hokie Hangover. We're going to talk about everything that matters at all. So don't think we'll fail you now.
Yeah, it'll be a great episode. Comment section was great tonight. Everyone that's been watching, everyone that's listening, there's still a ton of people watching the live show on YouTube. A ton of people have watched it on X. Thank you. We really do appreciate you guys supporting the show. Again, if you're on YouTube, subscribe, tap the bell so you never miss an episode of the Hokie Hangover. We go live for almost every show. And if you're on X, make sure you follow us and turn on notifications as well. All of our shows are streamed live on both platforms. They'll be available soon on all of the audio platforms as well as our website, HokieHangoverPod.com. You can also read my column there with the great title, The Depths of Despair, which is where I think we are as a football program right now. Again, Counts Family Pharmacy, Home Field Apparel, thank you so much for continuing to support the show. Until our critical Wofford preview in a couple days, go Hokies.